When Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city, and he cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. It is Friday, the 28th day of July 2023, and it's time for the reading of our devotional thought for today. And once again, we're going through the book of Esther in the devotional book Truth for Life by Pastor Alistair Begg. And our verses today is Esther chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, which reads, When Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city, and he cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. That's Esther chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. Alistair Begg writes, The outfit these verses describe Mordecai wearing wasn't a fashion statement, but a means of conveying the grief which had engulfed his heart. Throughout the Old Testament, tearing clothes and wearing sackcloth and ashes was a common way to publicly display mourning, agitation, and consternation. Job chapter 1 verse 20 and Jonah chapter 3 verses 6 through 9 are examples. This anguish was especially personal to Mordecai because he carried the burden of knowing his people were about to be exterminated on account of his refusal to bow before Haman. Esther chapter 3 verses 2 through 6. He had done what he thought was right, and he had to leave the rest to God. But that did not mean he glibly walked about singing of God's providences. No, Mordecai headed to the middle of the city wailing bitterly. It's a sad picture, and one replicated throughout the provinces as the news spread and others reacted similarly. As he cried and mourned, the king's gate was as close to the throne as Mordecai dared to go. If he had gone any closer, he would have been a dead man. Kings generally don't like it when people are grieved by their decrees. At times, you have a similar disdain for sadness within the church. Perhaps you have even heard it said that solid, faithful, believing souls never feel the need to lie on the ground, wail, or mourn. That is an error, fostered foolishly upon believers and owning far more of self-help books than to God's Word. George Lawrence writes that, quote, the faith of God's people does not interfere with the exercise of afflictions suited to mournful dispensation of providence. End of quote. These mournful dispensation of providence, tragedies that take your spouse when you want her to stay living with you, that takes your child when you expect him to grow old, that takes your health and your security or your dreams, bringing with them a turmoil of emotions. As we see in Mordecai, an honest and unmistakable reaction which sets many of us free to do the same, to feel and acknowledge and communicate our emotions in a godly way, rather than to suppress or ignore them. A trust in God and commitment to the understanding that He overrules everything for the praise of His glory and will bring everything underneath the rule of Christ does not rule out lament over the sinfulness and brokenness of this world. It is legitimate and even good for us to express deep sadness, lament, inquiry, discouragement, disappointment, fearfulness, and disheartenment when our paths lead us through difficulty. As you face such emotions, cry out to God. He does not forsake His people. He does not snare at your pain or disdain your tears. Indeed, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. That's Psalms 34, verse 18. And please make note of that, fellow believers. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. If you are brokenhearted today, cry out to Him. He is near to you, and He wants you to experience His presence even right now. So cry out to Him, won't you? He will not despise you. Our devotional thought today, Free to Mourn, coming on this 28th day of July 2023, from the devotional book Truth for Life by pastor and author Alistair Begg. And those of you reading or studying through the Word in a year, your assignment today is Psalms 46, 47, and 48, as well as the book of Acts, chapter 19, verses 21 through 41. And may the Lord bless you with such an innate sense of His presence, even right now. Clive Welsh here. God bless you.